Snoop Dogg enters his dealership in disguise, only to be underestimated by his own personnel. Observe the unexpected turn of events that imparts a valuable lesson on the importance of respect. Subscribe, like, and share your thoughts on this enlightening experience. Snoop Dogg entered the parking lot of Luxury Motors, his premier dealership in the lively city of Sunville, which he had recently acquired. The sleek luxury vehicles situated out front were practically glowing under the sun, as the heat shimmered off their glossy finishes. He exited his modest SUV and briefly examined the dealership's facade before parking it in an unmarked space at the rear. He was not outfitted to attract attention, rather, it was the opposite. His attire for the day consisted of sneakers, slightly worn trousers and a straightforward gray hoodie. He deliberately chose to dress in a casual manner in order to observe the dealership's true nature and to gain insight into its operations when no one was aware that the new supervisor was present. He observed a small group of employees conversing near the front desk as he approached the entrance. The glass doors were penetrated by the faint hum of casual conversation and merriment. Snoop entered the building by opening the door. The air-conditioned showroom, which was enveloped in the subtle aroma of fresh wax and leather, was a stark contrast to the heat outside. Under the bright overhead lighting, rows of immaculate automobiles shone. As he entered, the conversation subsided. Snoop observed the employees' fleeting glimpses, which were directed towards his sneakers and hoodie. He sensed a subtle change in energy that was more discernible than words. However, he was not present to make any assumptions, rather, he was there to observe. Then, Elena emerged from the opposite side of the showroom. Elena was a middle-aged woman with a focus that was even more acute than her features. The clipboard concealed beneath her arm lent an air of efficiency, while her polished heels and tailored blazer conveyed an air of authority. She approached with purpose, her heels tapping against the polished floor. Initially, her demeanor appeared to be cordial, however, Snoop's attention was drawn to the rigidity of her smile. Elena's voice was calm and clipped as she began, "Excuse me. Can I help you with something?" Snoop's demeanor was composed as he smiled. He casually stated, gesturing towards the vehicles, "I am merely here to observe." Elena's eyes narrowed as she scanned him from head to toe, her polite mask slipping ever so slightly, replacing it with something less hospitable. Her tone was tinged with uncertainty as she inquired, "Are you in the process of purchasing a vehicle?" Snoop continued to smile as he nodded. "Something like that." Elena's lips were pursed. "Well, we cater to a very specific clientele here. Most of our inventory requires pre-qualification. Perhaps I could recommend," an additional employee interrupted her before she could conclude. "Hey, Elena. The delivery guy is here." She briefly lost focus, but her gaze returned to Snoop, as if to guarantee that he would not stray too far. Snoop raised an eyebrow, but maintained a casual demeanor. "You're assuming I'm not qualified?" The inquiry appeared to surprise her, although it did so only momentarily. Her posture stiffened as she recovered rapidly. She responded with a contrived smile, "I am merely attempting to save you some time." Snoop's expression remained unwavering, despite his internal observation of her choice of words. His calm composure was unshaken, but the subtle sting of her assumptions was indisputable. "These vehicles start at six figures. Maybe I can direct you to this location." Elena gazed at him expectantly as the moment persisted, and Snoop pretended to admire one of the nearby cars, a sleek silver coupe with an aggressive design. He touched the door handle with his fingers and then peered back at Elena. "Nice automobile," he stated without hesitation. Her brows slightly furrowed, but she managed to force another smile. "It is. Maybe we can arrange an appointment when you are prepared to make a serious inquiry. At present, I must request that you refrain from touching the vehicles." Before he stepped back from the vehicle, Snoop stood there for a moment, contemplating her words. He nodded once, placed his hands in his pockets, and gestured for her to continue. "All right, let's hear it. What would you suggest for an individual in my situation?" Elena was taken aback by the directness of his inquiry, and she blinked. However, Snoop interrupted her before she could respond, saying, "If you believe you know what I require, I am entirely receptive." Her polite exterior cracked just enough to reveal the forbearance that lay beneath. "Perhaps something that is more cost-effective. I can provide you with directions to a dealership that specializes in pre-owned vehicles." Snoop's smile was fleeting, it failed to penetrate his irises. He had witnessed an abundance of horrors. He said softly, "That is quite the assumption." Elena trembled briefly as the statement lingered in the air. She then regained her composure and straightened her shoulders. She departed with a brisk pace, stating, "I will return with a list of alternatives." Snoop observed her depart, his expression unintelligible. He returned to the silver coupe, where his reflection was visible in the lustrous finish. This was going to be an intriguing day. Elena's dismissive demeanor was difficult to disregard, despite the fact that Snoop was not inclined to draw conclusions. He stood in the showroom's center, his hands in his pockets, and his gaze wandering over the collection of vehicles. The staff had resumed their conversations around him, but he occasionally caught a glance in his direction. It was the type of scrutiny he had grown acclimated to over the years, the silent judgment, the coded looks. Elena returned a moment later, clutching her clipboard closely as if it were a shield. Her brisk stride and forced smile revealed her annoyance. "All right," she said, halting a few feet away from him. "I have compiled a few alternatives that may be more appropriate for your circumstances." Snoop slightly cocked his head. "What is my predicament?" She handed him a printout of pre-owned vehicles, each with comprehensive descriptions and price tags that were significantly lower than the dealership's typical offerings. "Yes," Elena replied, her tone clipped. "These are more accessible models, reliable, economical, and, well, practical." The list was taken by Snoop without uttering a word, and his eyes were drawn to the page, revealing a compact hybrid, an older SUV, and a used sedan. His lips twitched in a faint sense of mirth, but he quickly concealed it by folding the paper and tucking it into his pocket. He expressed his gratitude for the effort with a level-headed demeanor. Elena appeared momentarily alarmed by his reply, however, she promptly recovered, placing her palms on her hips. "Listen," she said, her voice trembling as if she were about to disclose a confidential information. "I am merely endeavoring to be realistic with you. Luxury Motors is not suitable for all individuals. I am not interested in squandering your time." Snoop's expression was composed yet unyielding as he met her gaze. "And what specific reasons do you have to believe that I am not your target customer?" Elena briefly doubted her decision, but it was brief. "I have been engaged in this activity for an extended period of time. I am capable of identifying when an individual is in over their head." "Underwater?" Snoop repeated, his voice neutral, almost thoughtful. "Interesting." Elena's irises were tinged with apprehension, but she persevered. "I am simply being forthright. It is preferable to be transparent than to have an individual depart feeling disappointed." Snoop chuckled softly and slightly shook his head. "Truthful, is that the case? I appreciate candor. Would you be willing to allow me to communicate with the proprietor? Do you believe that we can achieve that?" Elena's eyebrows arched, and for the first time, she appeared to be truly taken aback. "Who is the proprietor?" "In the present day, this is not feasible. The proprietor does not conduct casual visits. They are an individual who is extremely busy." "I am confident that they are," Snoop stated, his head slightly cocked. "However, it would be beneficial to contact them. Inform them of my presence. I believe they would be interested in meeting me." Elena tightened her smile. She was beginning to lose her forbearance, and it was evident. "Sir, I am making an effort to be as courteous as possible, however, this is becoming absurd. I have other consumers to attend to. We can arrange a meeting with one of our sales consultants if you are sincere about purchasing a car. Conversely, if not, what?" Snoop inquired, his voice now possessing an unmistakable edge, despite his placid demeanor. Elena's frustration bubbled to the surface, causing her irises to narrow. "Otherwise, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The words hung in the air, laden with connotation. Snoop remained motionless, his eyes fixed on hers. The showroom appeared to be in a state of trance for a brief period. Subsequently, he gradually reached into his pocket and extracted his phone. "I'll make the call myself," he said, browsing through his contacts. Elena's eyebrows furrowed as she blinked. "Which activity are you engaged in?" Snoop replied, lifting the phone to his ear. "I am simply contacting the owner. It should not take long." Elena's self-assurance was shaken, and her aggravation transformed into bewilderment. She attempted to articulate herself, but no words emerged. A few employees nearby had ceased their activities, their attention captivated by the unfolding drama. Snoop extended his finger. "Just a moment," he said, before turning slightly away and speaking into the phone. "Yes, it is I. I am currently at the dealership. All is well, there was only a minor misunderstanding. Would you be able to inform them that I am present?" He terminated the conversation and reinserted the phone into his pocket, then returned his attention to Elena. "They will arrive shortly," he stated uncomplicatedly. Elena's mouth was slightly opened as she gazed at him. Whom did you just contact?" Snoop did not respond immediately, rather, he surveyed the showroom, his attention lingering on the staff who were now observing with rapt attention. "I suppose we will discover the answer," he said, his demeanor bordering on jocular. Elena moved uncomfortably, her composure beginning to crack, as the tension in the room was palpable and the weight of it pressed down on everyone present. Snoop, on the other hand, stood nonchalantly by one of the luxury SUVs, his calm demeanor only adding to the tension. Elena busied herself with her clipboard, though her movements were stiff and deliberate, betraying her unease. Minutes passed, but the room felt frozen in time. The few employees who were dispersed throughout the showroom whispered to one another, occasionally stealing glances at the unfolding scenario. It was evident that everyone was anticipating something or someone. The silence was interrupted by the sound of the primary doors opening. A man in a navy suit entered the room, his polished shoes gently clicking against the tile floor. His expression was serious yet warm, and his eyes immediately found Snoop. "Mr." The man extended his hand as he approached, saying, "Dog," with a wide smile. "It is a pleasure to see you." Snoop returned the handshake with a firm grasp, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Vince, I appreciate your attendance. I am grateful." Elena's clipboard nearly slid from her hands as her eyes darted between Snoop and Vincent, the dealership's regional director, causing the room to collectively stiffen. Her confusion quickly transformed into obvious alarm. "Please wait. Who is Mr. Dogg?" she repeated, her tone hesitant. Vincent's friendliness transitioned into a more professional, almost terse, demeanor as he turned to her. "Elena, I see you've already met Mr. Dogg." Elena blinked, her mouth opening and closing as if she were in quest of the appropriate words. I'm sorry. I was unaware that," Vincent concluded for her, his tone abrupt. "You are unaware that he is the new owner of this dealership?" He looked at Snoop with an expression of regret. "I trust this wasn't your ideal welcome." Snoop intervened by raising his hand. "Vincent, everything is fine. Elena and I may have initiated our relationship in an unfavorable manner." The entire room was captivated by the weight of his words, despite the tranquility of his voice. Elena's expression darkened, and she stepped back, holding her clipboard to her chest as if it were a lifeline. I am so sorry," she stammered, her voice scarcely above a whisper. "I was unaware." "You were unaware of what?" Snoop inquired, his demeanor remaining gentle yet authoritative. "That I could possess a property of this nature. That an individual such as myself might genuinely be a suitable resident." Her pupils widened, and for a brief period, she appeared to be completely bewildered. "I didn't mean," Elena was interrupted by Snoop, who extended his hand. "It's not a problem, Elena," he stated. He approached, his voice dwindling just enough to compel everyone to lean in. "However, I would like to inquire about something. Would you have treated me differently if I had not been the owner? Would you have treated me with the same level of deference as someone who entered the room in a suit and tie?" Elena opened her mouth, but she was unable to speak. The silence was deafening. Snoop nodded, as if her silence were sufficient. He then addressed Vincent, his voice resonating with a new sense of authority. "Letton, please ensure that all individuals are gathered in the conference room. I believe it is time for us to engage in a brief discussion regarding the manner in which things are conducted here." The air was thick with tension as the employees filtered into the sleek conference room. Despite its modern furnishings and glass walls, the room still felt stifling today. Elena's customary confident demeanor was replaced with a nervous stillness as she sat near the back. Vincent remained near the door, arms crossed, his expression unreadable as he observed the staff take their seats. Snoop cleared his throat, his gaze sweeping across the group, and the quiet murmur of whispers died down. He stood at the head of the table, calm and collected, commanding the attention of everyone in the room. "I am Snoop Dogg, and I am the new owner of Luxury Motors," Snoop Dogg began, his tone measured yet firm. "I am grateful for your attendance on such short notice." A few employees expressed their astonishment with murmurs of embarrassment, curiosity, and surprise. Elena lowered herself in her chair and refrained from making eye contact. "I arrived at this dealership today dressed in a casual manner for a specific purpose," Snoop explained, his voice remaining steady. "I was interested in observing the dealership's operations in the absence of any knowledge of my identity. I aspired to simulate the sensations that a prospective client might encounter upon entering these entrances." He paused for a moment to allow the words to settle before proceeding. "Today's events were disappointing. I was evaluated on the basis of my appearance rather than my abilities. I am not here to single anyone out, however, it is imperative that we discuss the implications of this for the dealership's culture." Elena's face flushed as she shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Snoop's eyes momentarily shifted to her before returning to the group as a whole. "This is not solely about me," he stated. "It is about each and every individual who enters those doors. Every client who does not conform to an individual's preconceived conception of the characteristics of a luxury car purchaser. Chris, one of the junior sales associates, tentatively raised his hand. Snoop nodded in his direction, indicating that he should proceed. Mr. Dogg, Chris began nervously, I believe that the majority of us endeavor to treat customers fairly, however, there are instances when it is difficult to refrain from making assumptions. Snoop's expression was contemplative as he nodded. I comprehend that. There are biases within each of us, regardless of whether we wish to acknowledge them. However, it is insufficient to merely strive for fairness. We must take an active role in challenging those prejudices. We must establish an atmosphere in which all individuals are treated with dignity, irrespective of their appearance, background, or any other factor. He paused, allowing the words to fully penetrate his mind before proceeding. This dealership has established a reputation for excellence. However, excellence is not solely defined by the automobiles we offer, it is also a reflection of the experience we offer. And from this point forward, that experience will be founded on fairness, inclusivity, and respect. Elena remained frozen, her hands clasped firmly in her lap, as Snoop's gaze settled on her. Despite this, there was a ripple of agreement throughout the room. Elena, he said with a gentle yet firm voice, I would like to provide you with the opportunity to speak. Is there anything else you would like to add? She was the center of attention, and she hesitated before speaking, her voice scarcely audible. I erred, she acknowledged, her face flushing. I misjudged you, and for that, I am genuinely sorry. Snoop nodded, his demeanor unreadable. I appreciate your acknowledgement. I trust that this experience will serve as a reminder to all of us, not just you, as accountability is the foundation of change. He returned to the group and stated, in the future, we will be implementing new training programs to guarantee that this dealership is a reflection of the principles I hold dear. No exceptions, every customer is entitled to be regarded with respect. If anyone has a concern about that, this is the time to express it. The silence in the conference room was definitive, interrupted only by the faint hum of the air conditioning. No one spoke, but the weight of Snoop's words persisted, pressing on everyone present. The silence was just long enough for Snoop to make his point before he spoke again, his voice remaining serene but resolute. That is satisfactory, he stated. I am pleased to observe that we are all in agreement. Although change is not always effortless, it is indispensable. Additionally, this dealership will serve as an example. He leaned forward slightly, his hands resting gently on the table's edge as he took a step away from it. Permit me to clarify. I did not arrive here today with the intention of causing anyone to feel embarrassed. I gained insight into the nature of the culture I have inherited and the ways in which we can enhance it. Elena, who was still sitting quietly near the rear, caught his attention. Elena, he said, his tone modulating just enough to indicate that he was not making an attack on her. You are a seasoned manager, and I am confident that you have worked diligently to achieve your current position. However, today served as a wake-up call for all of us, including you. Elena's eyes met his for the first time as she lifted her head. I comprehend, she stated, her voice trembling but genuine. I was mistaken, and I will do whatever it takes to rectify this situation. Snoop nodded. I am a proponent of second chances, he stated succinctly, but accountability is paramount. Ward stated, I will be meeting with you one-on-one to discuss the next steps. For the time being, let us concentrate on progress. He resumed his focus on the remaining members of the team after adjusting his posture. We're not just selling cars here. We're building trust, creating relationships, and representing a standard of excellence. If you're on board with that, I'm here to support you every step of the way. This time, the murmur of agreement was more genuine and audible. The initial tension dissipated, and the staff appeared to experience a renewed sense of purpose. Vincent, who had been standing calmly by the door, nodded in agreement. Snoop's smile was feeble, but it was the type that suggested both determination and relief. All right then, let's get back to work. And remember, how we treat people matters more than anything we sell. Snoop observed Elena loitering by the door as the employees began to exit the room. She approached him with trepidation, her hands twisting nervously. She addressed him as Mr. Dogg, her voice being subdued. I want to thank you for giving me a chance to do better. I won't let you down. Snoop gazed at her for a brief period before responding, his voice remaining unwavering. I hope you mean that, Elena. Actions speak louder than words. But I believe people can change if they're willing to try. Her eyes were aglow with sincerity as she nodded. I am. Before turning to Vincent, Snoop observed her depart. Let's set up a meeting with the staff next week, he suggested. I want to make sure everyone knows what's expected moving forward. Vincent's admiration for Snoop was apparent as he beamed. "You've got it, boss." Snoop returned to the showroom and peered at the cars, which were gleaming in the afternoon sun. He contemplated the extensive workload that lied ahead, but for the first time that day, he experienced a sense of optimism. This was not solely about operating a dealership. It was about establishing a more substantial entity, a location in which individuals were evaluated based on their character rather than their physical aspect. Snoop was prepared to take the lead. Elena's warm interaction with a new client, a young artist in casual attire, was observed by Snoop later that week, in a manner similar to his own. She listened attentively, her demeanor now characterized by genuine interest and respect, which signified the commencement of the cultural transformation he had foreseen. He was reassured by this minor victory that the voyage towards a more inclusive and respectful luxury motors was indeed feasible. The stories that are shared on this channel are wholly fictional and were made for the purpose of entertainment. We are proponents of a world in which all individuals are granted equal rights under the law and in which society continues to develop, evolve, and become more civilized. Our objective is to disseminate uplifting narratives that enhance the quality of life. Any resemblance to actual events, individuals, or organizations is entirely coincidental and inadvertent. These narratives are not intended to serve as a reference to any actual individuals, events, or entities, and they do not have any political or religious implications.